Why would a nurse risk her job just to whisper one sentence to me in a hospital hallway? She told me not to come back, said my brother was lying, and pointed me to a camera at 2 in the morning. I watched the footage alone, and from that moment on, I stayed quiet and started planning. Before we go any further, take a second to subscribe, hit the hype button, and like the video. It really helps the channel grow. And tell us in the comments, what would you do in this situation? The ICU corridor smelled like disinfectant and stale coffee. I walked past the nurse's station with my hands in my pockets, trying not to look like I'd been awake for 18 hours straight. Pierce had been admitted 3 days ago. Chest pains, they said. Shortness of breath. The kind of symptoms that get you a bed and morphine, and people asking gentle questions. I pushed through the double doors into his room. He was propped up against pillows, oxygen tube under his nose, looking pale and smaller than usual. When he saw me, his face softened into something grateful and tired. "Wilder," he said, voice hoarse. "You came." "Of course I came." He reached for my hand. His grip was weak. "I didn't want to worry you, It came out of nowhere." I pulled a chair closer. "What did the doctors say?" "They're running tests. Dr. Feld thinks it might be cardiac. They want to keep me a few more days." He paused, looked away. "I'm scared, man." I squeezed his hand. "You're going to be fine." We talked for 20 minutes. He asked about work, about the apartment, about whether I'd fed his cat. Normal things. Brother things. The monitors beeped steadily beside his bed, creating a rhythm that felt almost hypnotic. Pierce adjusted the blanket over his legs, wincing as if the movement caused pain. I noticed how carefully he moved, how deliberate each gesture seemed. "The nights are the worst," he said quietly. "I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I think about what could happen." "You're in the right place. They're taking care of you." "I know, I wish Mom and Dad were still around. They'd know what to say." I felt the familiar weight of that absence. Our parents had been gone for 6 years. Car accident on a winter road. Pierce and I were all that was left of the family now. "They'd tell you to listen to the doctors and stop worrying," I said. He smiled weakly. "Yeah, they would." When the nurse came in to check his vitals, I stood and told him I'd be back tomorrow. He nodded, already looking exhausted again. I squeezed his shoulder and headed for the door. The hallway was emptier now. Visiting hours were almost over. A few people lingered near the elevators, saying goodbyes that stretched too long. I was halfway there when someone touched my elbow. "Mr. Sornell?" I turned. The nurse was young, maybe mid-30s, with tired eyes and a name tag that read Ariel Brooks. She glanced over her shoulder before speaking, as if checking to see who might be watching. "I need to tell you something," she said quietly. "About Pierce? Don't come back." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Not during the day. Your brother isn't telling you the truth." I stared at her. "What are you talking about?" She looked nervous, like she was about to step off a ledge. Her hands were shaking slightly. "There's a camera in the hallway. Check the footage from 2 a.m. last night. Just watch it. You'll understand." "Why would I can't say more. But you need to see it." She let go of my arm and walked away before I could respond, her shoes squeaking softly on the polished floor. I stood there, frozen, as the elevator doors opened and closed without me. My heart was pounding. The nurse had been afraid. Not just nervous, afraid. Afraid to be seen talking to me. Afraid of what might happen if the wrong person noticed. I pressed the button again and stepped inside when the doors opened. As they slid shut, I caught a glimpse of Ariel Brooks at the far end of the corridor, watching me leave. Her expression was unreadable, but something in her posture suggested relief mixed with apprehension. The elevator descended slowly. I leaned against the wall and tried to process what she'd said. Pierce lying? About what? He'd been in pain when I arrived. The monitors showed his heart rate, his oxygen levels. Everything looked legitimate. But the nurse had risked her job to tell me otherwise. The doors opened onto the ground floor. I walked through the lobby, past the gift shop and the information desk, and out into the parking lot. The night air was cold against my face. I got into my car and sat there for a long time, keys in my hand, not starting the engine. 2 a.m. footage. I didn't know what I was supposed to see, but I knew with absolute certainty that I would look. The waiting area was full the next morning. I recognized some faces, friends of the family, people who'd known Pierce since high school. They smiled at me with sympathy, like I was the one who needed comforting. "How's he doing?" asked Lydia Vance, an old neighbor who used to bring us cookies when we were kids. "Stable," I said. "They're still figuring it out." "He's so brave," she said, shaking her head. "Going through this alone, and at his age, it's heartbreaking." I almost corrected her. He wasn't alone. I'd been there every day. But something stopped me. I just nodded and moved toward the cafeteria. The place was half empty. I grabbed coffee and sat near the window, watching people come and go. 2 staff members were talking at the next table, voices low but not quite low enough. "Poor guy," one of them said. "His brother's barely holding it together." I looked up. They weren't looking at me. One was a young man in scrubs, the other an older woman with a clipboard. "I heard he's pretty emotional," the other one replied. "Overreacts to everything. Makes it harder on the patient." My chest tightened. I set the cup down carefully, focusing on keeping my hands steady. "Yeah, well, family drama. The patient's the one we need to worry about. He's handling it better than anyone expected." They stood and left. I stayed in my seat, staring at the coffee going cold in front of me. Overreacts to everything. I'd never met those people before. They didn't know me, but somehow they had an opinion. Somehow they'd formed a judgment about who I was and how I behaved. I thought about Pierce in that hospital bed, weak, grateful, scared, and I thought about what the nurse had said. I walked back to the ICU. Pierce was awake, talking to Dr. Feld. When he saw me, he waved weakly. The doctor was a tall man in his 50s, with gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses. "Wilder, hey, Dr. Feld was just explaining the test results." The doctor nodded at me. "We're keeping him for observation. His symptoms are inconsistent, so we want to be thorough." "Inconsistent how?" I asked. "Just variable. Some days better than others. Some tests show abnormalities, others don't. It's not uncommon with cardiac issues, but we want to rule everything out." He glanced at Pierce. "But we'll get to the bottom of it." After he left, Pierce sighed. "I'm sorry you have to deal with this." "It's fine." "No, really. I know you're stressed. You always get like this when things go wrong." I looked at him. "Get like what?" "You know, anxious, overthinking. I can see it in your face." He smiled gently. "It's okay. I get it. I'd be the same way if you were the one in here." I didn't respond. I sat there for another 10 minutes, listening to him talk about the medications they were trying and the different specialists who'd come to see him. He spoke with the kind of detail that suggested he'd memorized everything, rehearsed it. When I finally left, I stopped in the hallway and looked at the camera mounted near the ceiling. Small, discreet, easy to miss if you weren't looking for it. In the parking garage, I leaned against my car and stared at the concrete ceiling. Somewhere above me, my brother was performing a version of events I didn't recognize. And people were believing him. They thought I was emotional, unstable, the kind of person whose judgment couldn't be trusted. I thought about the nurse's words. 2 a.m., the camera. I got in the car and drove home. It took me 2 days to figure out how to see the footage. I didn't go back to the hospital. I called Pierce once, said I was swamped at work, promised I'd visit soon. He sounded disappointed but understanding. "Take care of yourself," he said. Don't let this stress you out too much. I spent those 2 days making phone calls, casual inquiries, a friend of a friend who worked in hospital security, a question about visitor logs for insurance purposes. I didn't push. I didn't demand. I just asked, politely, and waited. The key was patience. I called the security office and explained that I wanted to confirm my visit times for personal records. The woman on the phone was sympathetic. Of course, sir. Let me see what I can do. I called the IT department about accessing digital records. I mentioned wanting to understand the hospital's data protection policies. They sent me forms and information packets. I spoke to a lawyer friend about medical privacy laws, what could and couldn't be accessed, where the boundaries were. Piece by piece, I built a map of how the system worked. On the third night, I got a text from the security contact, just a link and a password. No explanation, no questions asked. I sat in my kitchen with my laptop and a notebook. The footage was grainy but clear enough. I scrolled to 2 a.m., 3 nights ago, the hallway outside Pierce's room. At 2:14 a.m., the door opened. Pierce stepped out. No oxygen tube, no weakness in his step. He walked to the nurse's station, leaned against the counter, and spoke to someone off camera. He was smiling, relaxed. He gestured with his hands as he talked, the way he always did when he was telling a story. At 2:31 a.m., he walked back to his room. Still no sign of distress, no pain, nothing. I watched it 3 more times. I wrote down the timestamps. I noted every movement, every detail, the way he moved, the confidence in his posture, the absence of any medical equipment. Then I scrolled back further. 2 nights before that. Same time. There he was again, walking freely, talking to a different nurse, laughing at something. I checked every night for the past week. The pattern was consistent. Between 2 and 3 a.m., when the ICU was quietest, Pierce was active, mobile, healthy. And every morning, when the doctors made their rounds, he was back in bed, weak, suffering, afraid. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark. The anger didn't come, neither did the shock. What I felt was clarity, cold, sharp clarity. Pierce wasn't sick. He was performing. And he'd been performing for me, for the doctors, for everyone who walked into that room. I opened my notebook and wrote the date and time at the top of the page. Then I started making a list. Evidence, timestamps, patterns, contradictions. I worked until 4 in the morning, organizing everything into a timeline. When I was done, I closed the notebook and put it in a drawer. I didn't call anyone. I didn't confront him. I just sat there, in the silence, and started planning. I went back to the hospital 4 days later. Pierce looked surprised to see me. "Wilder, I thought you were busy." I was. Wrapped up a project. I sat down in the chair beside his bed. "How are you feeling?" "Better, I think. They might let me go home soon." He adjusted the oxygen tube. "Dr. Feld said the tests are looking more promising." "That's good." "Yeah, I'm relieved. I was starting to worry they'd never figure it out." He paused. "I missed you, man. It's been lonely here. I'm sorry. Work was crazy." "I get it. You've got responsibilities." He smiled. "I'm just glad you're here now." We talked for a while. He told me about a new medication they were trying, some experimental treatment that Dr. Feld thought might help. He mentioned that the nurses had been incredible, so attentive and caring. He thanked me for being patient with him, for not giving up on him. I asked neutral questions. What time did they usually do rounds? Were the nurses checking on him at night? Did he have trouble sleeping? He answered everything without hesitation. Too much detail, too much confidence. "They check on me every few hours," he said. "Sometimes I wake up and someone's there, adjusting the monitors or checking my vitals. It's comforting, actually. Makes me feel safe." "Do you ever get up during the night?" "Sometimes, if I need to use the bathroom. But I always call for help. They don't want me walking around alone in case something happens." I nodded. Makes sense. You seem better, I said after a moment. I am. I really am. He smiled. I'm sorry I worried you. I know this has been hard on you too. It's okay. Before I left, I stopped by the records office. I asked about visitor logs, said I wanted to confirm dates for my own records. The woman behind the desk was polite and efficient. She printed out a summary without question, handing it to me with a smile. Here you go, Mr. Sornell. Is there anything else you need? No, this is perfect. Thank you. I folded the paper and put it in my jacket. 2 days later, I got a call from Dr. Feld's assistant. They wanted to schedule a meeting. Just to clear things up, she said. Make sure everyone's on the same page about the treatment plan. I agreed to come in at the end of the week. Pierce called that night. Did you hear about the meeting? Yeah. I think they want to make sure you're okay with the treatment plan. You know, family input. Dr. Feld mentioned wanting your perspective on everything. Makes sense. Wilder? His voice softened. Are we good? Of course. Why wouldn't we be? I don't know, you've been distant. I just want to make sure I didn't do something wrong. You didn't. I'm just busy. I'll see you at the meeting. I hung up and went back to my notebook. The timeline was almost complete. Every piece of evidence, every contradiction, every moment that didn't add up. I cross-referenced the footage timestamps with the visitor logs, with the medical reports I'd been able to access. Everything matched. Every inconsistency, every gap, every moment Pierce had claimed to be too weak to move. There was documentation proving otherwise. I added one more note at the bottom of the page. Request compliance officer presence at meeting. Then I closed the notebook and went to bed. I didn't visit the hospital again. I stayed home, organized the documents, cross-referenced the timestamps with the visitor logs. Everything matched. Every inconsistency, every gap, every moment Pierce had claimed to be too weak to move. He called twice. I let it go to voicemail. The first message was concerned. Hey, just checking in. Wanted to make sure you're okay. Call me back. The second was more anxious. Wilder, I'm starting to worry. Please call me. We're still brothers, right? I deleted both messages without responding. On the fourth day, I took a walk to the bus stop near my apartment. It was late, almost midnight. The street was empty except for a few cars passing by. I sat on the bench and stared at the pavement, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. Pierce and I had always been close. After our parents passed, we'd leaned on each other. I'd helped him through 2 job losses and a difficult breakup. He'd been there when I'd struggled with my own challenges. We'd been a team, or so I'd thought. Now I saw it differently. The times he'd asked for money and never paid it back. The stories that never quite added up. The way he'd always positioned himself as the victim, the one who needed protection and support. And I'd given it to him. Every time. Because that's what family does. Except family isn't supposed to weaponize your loyalty. Family isn't supposed to manipulate you into questioning your own judgment. I stood up and walked back to the apartment. The night air was cold, but I barely felt it. The next morning, I put on a clean shirt and drove to the hospital. The meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. in a conference room on the administrative floor. I arrived 15 minutes early and waited in the hallway, reviewing my notes one last time. When I walked into the room, Dr. Feld was already there, along with Paula Raines, the compliance officer I'd specifically requested. Pierce was sitting at the far end of the table, looking nervous. His eyes met mine, searching for reassurance. I didn't give him any. Wilder, Dr. Feld said, standing. Thanks for coming. I nodded and sat down across from Pierce. Paula Raines opened a folder. We wanted to discuss your brother's treatment and make sure there are no concerns from a family perspective. Dr. Feld thought it would be helpful to have everyone together to review the care plan. I appreciate that, I said. Pierce was watching me. I could feel it, waiting for me to say something supportive, something that would reinforce the narrative he'd built. Before we start, I said, pulling a USB drive from my pocket. I'd like to show you something. Dr. Feld frowned. What is it? Security footage. From 3 nights ago, 2 a.m. The room went silent. Pierce's face didn't change, but his hands tightened on the edge of the table. Wilder, what are you doing? Showing them the truth. Paula Raines looked at Dr. Feld, then at me. Where did you get this footage, Mr. Sornell? That's not important. What's important is what's on it. I plugged the drive into the laptop at the center of the table. The screen flickered to life, and I navigated to the video file. This is from 3 nights ago, 2:14 a.m. I pressed play. The footage played in silence. Pierce, walking out of his room. Pierce at the nurse's station, chatting casually. Pierce moving freely, no sign of distress, no medical equipment. Dr. Feld leaned forward, his expression shifting from curiosity to concern. Paula Raines made a note on her pad, her pen moving quickly across the page. Pierce didn't say anything. He just stared at the screen, his jaw tight. When the video ended, I opened another file. This is from 2 nights before that. Same time, same behavior. I played it. Pierce again, walking around freely, talking, laughing. And this is from 5 nights ago. Another video. Same pattern. Dr. Feld sat back in his chair. Mr. Sornell, can you explain this? Pierce cleared his throat. I was restless. I needed to move. You can't expect me to stay in bed 24 hours a day. You told the night staff you were in severe pain at 2:45 a.m., Dr. Feld said slowly. 15 minutes after this footage shows you walking around without assistance. The pain comes and goes. I've told you that. I pulled out another sheet of paper. These are the visitor logs. According to these, Pierce logged complaints about chest pain and shortness of breath on 6 separate occasions, all within an hour of being observed moving freely on camera. Paula Raines took the paper and examined it. Her expression remained neutral, but her focus was intense. Pierce's voice rose slightly. This is ridiculous. You're twisting everything because you're upset. I'm not upset, I said calmly. I'm showing you what happened. You're making it look like I'm lying. Are you? He stared at me. I can't believe you're doing this. I'm your brother. That's why I'm here, because you're my brother, and you've been lying to everyone. Dr. Feld rubbed his face. Mr. Sornell, this is very concerning. These inconsistencies suggest that your reported symptoms may not align with your actual condition. I am sick, Pierce insisted. The tests have been inconclusive, Dr. Feld interrupted, because your symptoms don't follow any consistent pattern. We've been treating you based on your self-reported experiences. If those reports are inaccurate... Paula Raines closed her folder. Mr. Sornell, I need to inform you that this meeting has shifted from a care review to a compliance investigation. Pierce went pale. A what? Fraudulent medical claims, misuse of hospital resources. Depending on what we uncover, there could be serious consequences. This is insane. Pierce looked at me desperately. Wilder, please, tell them this is a mistake. You know me. You know I wouldn't... I know exactly what you would do, I said. I've watched you do it. He stood up abruptly. I don't have to listen to this. Sit down, Paula Raines said firmly. He hesitated, then sat. I pulled up another document on the laptop. These are the medical activity logs. Pierce has requested medication increases 4 times in the past week. Each time was logged within 2 hours of him being observed moving freely on camera. Dr. Feld leaned forward to read the screen. His expression darkened. These requests were all for controlled substances, pain medication. I needed them, Pierce said. The pain was unbearable. But the pain only seemed to occur after you'd been active, I said. And always during hours when there were fewer staff members to verify your condition. Paula Raines made another note. Dr. Feld, Has there been any objective medical evidence to support the severity of symptoms Mr. Sornell has reported? The doctor hesitated. The tests have been inconsistent. We've seen some irregularities, but nothing that would explain the level of distress he's described. So, you've been treating him based primarily on his self-reporting? Yes, that's standard practice when symptoms are subjective. And he's been receiving controlled medications based on those reports? Dr. Feld's jaw tightened. Yes. Pierce's hands were shaking now. This isn't fair. You're all ganging up on me because of some footage that doesn't prove anything. It proves you lied, I said. Multiple times. To multiple people. And you used me to make it more believable. You told people I was emotional, that I overreacted, that I couldn't be trusted. I kept my voice level. You built a story where I was the unstable one, so if I ever questioned you, no one would believe me. Pierce's face crumpled. That's not what I was doing. Yes, it was, and it almost worked. Paula Raines stood up. Mr. Sornell, we're going to need to conduct a full review of your case. That includes interviewing all staff members who've had contact with you, reviewing every medical record, and examining all requests for medication and treatment. You can't do this, Pierce said weakly. We can, and we will. If we find evidence of fraudulent activity, we'll be filing a formal report with the state medical board and potentially with law enforcement. The color drained from his face. Law enforcement? Fraudulent insurance claims are a crime, Mr. Sornell. If you've been receiving treatment and medication under false pretenses, that's not just a hospital policy violation. It's a legal matter. Dr. Feld looked at me. We'll need copies of everything you have, the footage, the logs, any other documentation. I ejected the USB drive and placed it on the table. It's all here. Pierce stared at the small device like it was a weapon. Wilder, please. We can talk about this. Just you and me. We don't need to involve all these people. It's already involved, I said. You made sure of that when you turned me into part of your story. He reached across the table toward me. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. I made mistakes, but we're family. We can fix this. I stood up. No, we can't. Please. I'm done here. Paula Raines nodded. We'll be in touch, Mr. Sornell. Both of you. Don't leave the area until we've completed our investigation. I walked to the door. Behind me, I heard Pierce start to say something else, but I didn't stop. I didn't turn around. I just walked out and let the door close behind me. The investigation took 6 days. During that time, I went to work, came home, and existed in a strange kind of limbo. I didn't hear from Pierce directly, but I heard about him through other channels. Lydia Vance called on the 3rd day. Wilder, what's going on? I heard there's some kind of investigation at the hospital. It's complicated. People are saying Pierce might have that he wasn't really sick? I can't talk about it. But he's your brother. Surely you'd know if something was wrong. I did know. That's why I reported it. There was a long silence. Oh, I see. I have to go, Lydia. Of course. I hope you know what you're doing. I hung up. The whispers started after that. I could feel them whenever I left the apartment. Neighbors who used to wave now looked away. The cashier at the grocery store gave me a strange look when I paid for my food. Word traveled fast in a city this size. On the 7th day, Paula Raines called. Mr. Sornell, I wanted to update you on our findings. Okay. We've completed our initial review. Your brother has been discharged from the hospital. We've also filed a formal report with our compliance board and with the state medical board regarding fraudulent medical claims. What happens now? The state board will conduct their own investigation. Depending on their findings, there could be fines, legal action, or both. We've also flagged his medical record in our system. He won't be able to seek treatment at this facility without full disclosure of this incident. I understand. There's one more thing. Nurse Brooks wanted me to pass along a message. She said you did the right thing. Tell her thank you. I will. And Mr. Sornell, I know this wasn't easy, but you potentially saved lives. If your brother had continued this pattern at another facility, someone might have been denied care because resources were being diverted to him. I hadn't thought about it that way. Thank you for telling me that. Take care of yourself. She hung up. I sat on the couch and stared at the wall. The apartment felt too quiet, too empty. I thought about calling someone, but I didn't know who. The people I'd considered friends were all connected to Pierce somehow. They'd all heard his version of events first. Pierce called that night. I let it ring. He called again the next morning. I didn't answer. On the third day, he left a voicemail. His voice was hoarse, broken. Wilder, please. I know you're angry. I know I messed up. But I'm your brother. We're all we have left. Mom and Dad would want us to work this out. Just call me back, please. I deleted it, but his words stuck with me. Mom and Dad would want us to work this out. Would they? I thought about my parents. My father had been a straightforward man, honest almost to a fault. He'd taught us that integrity mattered more than convenience. My mother had been kind, but not naive. She'd always said that love without boundaries wasn't love at all. It was enabling. They wouldn't have wanted me to protect Pierce at the expense of the truth. They would have wanted me to do exactly what I did. A week later, I ran into Lydia Vance at the grocery store. She saw me and hesitated, clearly debating whether to approach. Finally, she did. Wilder. Lydia. I've been thinking about what you said, about knowing something was wrong. Okay. I talked to some other people who've known Pierce for a long time. She paused. There are stories, things I didn't know about, or things I ignored because I didn't want to believe them. Like what? Like the time he claimed someone hit his car in a parking lot, but the damage didn't match his story. Or when he said he was robbed, but the police couldn't find any evidence. Little things that seemed believable at the time, but now you're questioning them. Yeah. She looked uncomfortable. I feel terrible, like I should have seen it sooner. You couldn't have known. But you did. You figured it out. Only because someone warned me. Otherwise, I would have believed him too. She nodded slowly. Well, for what it's worth, I think you did the right thing, even if it was hard. Thank you. She left, and I finished my shopping. As I walked to the car, I thought about all the other people who might be re-examining their memories of Pierce, all the stories they'd accepted without question because he'd been so convincing. How many times had he done this? How long had it been going on? I didn't have answers, and maybe I never would. 2 weeks after the meeting, I got a letter from the hospital's legal department. It was brief and formal. They were pursuing civil action against Pierce for fraudulent use of medical services. The estimated cost of his care during his admission was over $40,000, most of which had been billed to insurance based on false claims. They thanked me for my cooperation and informed me that I might be called as a witness if the case went to court. I filed the letter away and tried to move on. At work, no one knew what had happened. I'd kept everything private, never mentioned it to my colleagues. That distance felt necessary. I needed one part of my life to remain untouched by all of this. I threw myself into my projects, stayed late at the office, took on extra assignments, anything to keep my mind occupied. But at night, alone in the apartment, the thoughts came anyway. Had I done the right thing? The question kept circling back, no matter how many times I told myself the answer was yes. Pierce was my brother, the only family I had left, and I'd destroyed him. Except that wasn't quite right. Pierce had destroyed himself. I'd just stopped enabling it. Still, the guilt lingered. Not because I regretted what I'd done, but because some part of me had expected to feel victorious, vindicated, something other than this hollow, quiet certainty. 3 weeks after everything ended, I went back to the bus stop near my apartment. It was late again, past midnight. I sat on the same bench and watched the empty street. A city bus pulled up. The driver looked at me expectantly. I shook my head, and he drove on. I thought about Ariel Brooks, about the risk she'd taken to tell me the truth. She could have stayed silent. She could have let me go on believing Pierce's story. It would have been easier, safer. But she hadn't. She'd spoken up, quietly and carefully, and given me the chance to see what was really happening. That took courage. More courage than most people had. I wished I could thank her properly, but I didn't even know if she still worked at the hospital. Paula Raines had passed along her message, but I had no way to contact her directly. Maybe that was better. Maybe some acts of kindness weren't meant to be acknowledged. They just existed, small and significant, changing the course of things in ways that couldn't be measured. I stood up and walked home. The streets were quiet. A few cars passed, their headlights cutting through the darkness. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. When I got back to the apartment, I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table. My notebook was still in the drawer where I'd left it. I pulled it out and flipped through the pages. All the evidence I'd gathered. All the proof I'd needed to make people see the truth. It felt strange to look at it now, like reading someone else's notes, someone more certain, more focused, more willing to burn everything down in the name of honesty. Was that who I was? Or was it just who I'd become in response to Pierce? I didn't know. And maybe it didn't matter. I closed the notebook and put it away. A month after everything ended, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Wilder? It wasn't Pierce. It was Ariel Brooks. Hi, I said, surprised. I hope it's okay that I'm calling. I got your number from the hospital directory. I wanted to check in, see how you're doing. I'm okay. How are you? Relieved, honestly. I wasn't sure you'd believe me, or that you'd be able to do anything about it. I believed you. I know, that's rare. She hesitated. Can I ask you something? Sure. How did you stay so calm when you found out? I thought about it. I didn't have a choice. If I'd reacted emotionally, he would have used it against me. He'd already set that up, told people I was unstable, that I overreacted. So I stayed quiet and built the case instead. That takes incredible discipline. It takes knowing who you're dealing with. She laughed softly. Fair point. Well, I'm glad you did what you did. People like that, they don't stop unless someone forces them to. I know. I've been thinking about it a lot, she continued, about how many other patients might be doing the same thing, how many people might be manipulating the system because they know how to perform vulnerability. It's probably more common than anyone wants to admit. Yeah, it is. She paused. Anyway, I just wanted to say thank you for taking it seriously and for handling it the way you did. You're the one who took the risk. I just followed through. We both did what we had to do. Her voice softened. Take care of yourself, Wilder. You too. She hung up. I set the phone down and looked around the apartment. Everything was the same as it had been a month ago. Same furniture, same walls, same routine. But I felt different. Not lighter exactly. Not unburdened. Just clearer. Pierce had tried to control the narrative. He'd positioned himself as the victim, the fragile one, the person who needed protection. And for a while, it had worked. People had believed him. They'd sympathized with him. They'd looked at me with pity or suspicion, depending on how he'd framed the story. But narratives only work when people believe them. And the moment I stopped believing, the moment I looked at the evidence instead of the performance, the whole thing collapsed. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt like I'd done what needed to be done. And that was enough. Over the next few weeks, life settled into a new rhythm. I went to work, came home, ran errands. I started going to the gym again. I called a few old friends I'd lost touch with. people who weren't connected to Pierce. Slowly, I began to rebuild a life that was separate from him, independent, mine. It wasn't easy. There were moments when I wondered if I should reach out, try to mend things. Moments when I remembered the good times, the years when we'd been close, when we'd relied on each other. But then, I'd remember the footage, the lies, the way he'd manipulated everyone around him, including me. And I'd know that I'd made the right choice. One evening, about 6 weeks after the investigation closed, I saw Dr. Feld at a coffee shop downtown. He was sitting alone, reading a newspaper. When he noticed me, he waved me over. "Wilder, how are you?" "I'm okay." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit for a minute." I did. "I wanted to say something," he began. "What you did, it wasn't easy, but it was right." "I know." He nodded slowly. "A lot of people wouldn't have done it. Family loyalty can be complicated. Loyalty isn't the same as enabling." "No, it's not." He folded the newspaper. "For what it's worth, you probably saved him from something worse. If he'd kept going, someone else would have caught on eventually, and it might not have been handled as cleanly." "Maybe. And you saved the hospital from a liability, and other patients from being denied care because resources were tied up with false claims." He met my eyes. "You did a good thing, Wilder, even if it doesn't feel like it." "Thank you." He stood. "Take care of yourself." "You too." He left, and I stayed at the table, staring at the coffee I'd ordered but hadn't touched. Pierce had counted on me being the person everyone thought I was. Emotional, reactive, easy to manipulate. But I wasn't that person. I'd never been that person. I'd just been quiet, and Pierce had mistaken quietness for weakness. It was a mistake he wouldn't make again. The hospital boardroom was on the 5th floor, behind heavy wooden doors meant to intimidate. Paula Raines had called 3 days earlier, professional but urgent. "Mr. Sornell, the State Medical Board has completed its investigation. A final hearing has been scheduled. Your presence is required." I'd agreed immediately. Now I stood outside the boardroom, checking my watch. 9:58 a.m. 2 minutes. The door opened and Paula stepped out. "Wilder, thank you for coming. Everyone's inside." The room was larger than I expected, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A long table filled the space. Dr. Feld was already seated, along with 3 board members. At the far end sat Pierce, smaller, older, diminished. He looked up when I entered. Something flickered across his face. Hope? Maybe. I took my seat without responding. "Let's begin," said the woman at the head of the table. "I'm Dr. Helena Vance, chair of the State Medical Board. This hearing concerns Case 2847B, Pierce Sornell and allegations of medical fraud." She opened a folder. "Over 6 weeks, we reviewed security footage, medical records, staff interviews, and financial documents. Independent experts evaluated the reported symptoms." Pierce stared down at his folded hands. "Our findings are conclusive," Dr. Vance continued. "Mr. Sornell engaged in a sustained pattern of fraudulent medical claims over at least 3 weeks. He deliberately misrepresented symptoms to obtain controlled medications, unnecessary treatments, and extended hospitalization." She met his eyes. "The total cost was $42,000, $31,000 billed to insurance, $11,000 absorbed by the hospital's charity care program." "I was sick," Pierce said softly. "I really was." "No, Mr. Sornell," Dr. Vance replied, firm but measured. "You exhibited behavior consistent with factitious disorder. But this went beyond seeking care. You pursued financial gain through insurance fraud and manipulated medical professionals into prescribing controlled substances." Pierce's jaw tightened. "You can't prove that." "We can, and we have." She gestured to one of the board members, who pulled up a screen behind her. "This is a compilation of security footage from your admission. It shows you moving freely during late-night hours, engaging in normal activities, and displaying no signs of the cardiac distress you reported." The footage played. Pierce walking, talking, laughing. The timestamps were clear. We also have testimony from 4 nurses who reported inconsistencies in your behavior, but were discouraged from documenting them by senior staff who believed your claims, Dr. Vance continued. One of those nurses, Ariel Brooks, ultimately came forward with her concerns to your brother. She looked at me. Mr. Wilder Sornell's intervention prevented this fraud from continuing and potentially saved lives by freeing up resources for genuinely ill patients. Pierce finally looked at me, really looked at me. His expression was a mixture of betrayal and disbelief. You ruined me. No, I said calmly. You did this to yourself. I'm your brother. You used that against me. You told people I couldn't be trusted. You made me part of your lie. I never meant. It doesn't matter what you meant. It matters what you did. Dr. Vance cleared her throat. Mr. Pierce Sornell, the board has reached a decision. You are hereby barred from receiving non-emergency medical care at any facility in this state, without full disclosure of this incident. You will be required to repay the full amount of fraudulent charges, $42,000, within 18 months. Pierce's face went white. I don't have that kind of money. You'll need to arrange a payment plan. Additionally, we are referring this case to the district attorney's office for potential criminal prosecution. Criminal? His voice cracked. You can't do this. We can, and we are. Insurance fraud is a felony in this state. The DA will determine whether to press charges. Paula Raines handed Pierce a folder. These are the board's official findings and the repayment terms. You have 30 days to respond. Pierce took the folder with shaking hands. He looked at Dr. Feld, at Paula Raines, at the board members. Then he looked at me again. I hope you're happy, he said bitterly. I didn't respond. Dr. Vance stood. This hearing is concluded. Mr. Pierce Sornell, you're free to leave. Mr. Wilder Sornell, please stay for a moment. Pierce stood slowly. He looked like he wanted to say something else, but he just turned and walked to the door. It closed behind him with a soft click. Dr. Vance sat down again. Mr. Sornell, on behalf of the board, I want to thank you. What you did required enormous courage. I just showed you what was there. That's not as common as you might think. Most people, when confronted with evidence of a loved one's wrongdoing, choose denial. You chose truth. Paula Raines nodded. You also did it methodically. You gathered irrefutable evidence, presented it calmly, and let the facts speak for themselves. That made our investigation significantly easier. I'm glad I could help. Dr. Vance leaned forward. I want you to understand something. Your brother's behavior wasn't just wrong, it was dangerous. Factitious disorder is a serious psychiatric condition, but when it's combined with fraud and manipulation, it becomes a threat to the entire healthcare system. Every resource he consumed was a resource unavailable to someone who genuinely needed it. I know. And you stopped it. You should be proud of that. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. She stood and extended her hand. If you ever need anything, a reference, support, anything at all, please don't hesitate to contact us. I shook her hand. Thank you. As I left the boardroom, a quiet finality settled in. This was it. No more investigations, no more hearings, no more waiting for the truth to surface. It was over. I rode the elevator down and stepped into the bright morning sun. The city stretched out ahead, indifferent, busy, alive. I sat in my car for a moment, hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead. Pierce was finished. His reputation shattered, his finances in ruins, his future uncertain, and I was the one who'd brought it down. But I'd also stopped him. From manipulating more doctors, more nurses, more families. From siphoning resources meant for people who truly needed them. I'd done the right thing. I started the engine and pulled out of the lot. The hearing was done, the evidence presented, the decision made. Pierce would face consequences now, real ones, beyond persuasion or performance. And I would move on, knowing I'd chosen truth over loyalty, facts over emotion, justice over family. That was enough.